Hey, welcome back to another video. I want to go over a comment that I received that I think a lot of people will probably resonate with this. Let me see if I can just pull it up here real quick. It's from Miss Jasmine, and it says, I don't know, guys. I had an outburst at my 17-year-old who did something I thought was selfish, and I'm exhausted working in a medical facility throughout the pandemic, and he went to his dad's house. Now, dad leaves him with me for long periods of time. I take care of tuition with my own money, not through child support. I take care of applying for colleges. I take care of. And I feel that actually the dilemma is more about the fact of my caring than it is for what I'm doing. I think the problem is, and let me just pause for a minute. I think the problem is that you're doing these things and you feel like there's no appreciation. There's no, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess basically appreciation. It's like you're making the sacrifices. You're focusing on your son, and I'm assuming it's a son. Maybe you said he throughout the farther down, and you just get to the point where you're frustrated and you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, not accomplishing anything or accomplishing very little, but you're doing so much. And then you compare that or contrast that with the ex who is doing like a 32nd of what you're doing, and there's no consequences for that. So, and then you feel like you're getting taken advantage of. Trust me, I can relate to this. So, I mean, this is unfortunately very common when you go through this, and it drives you crazy because you would think that somebody at 17 would have enough maturity to be able to say, wow, this person really cares about me. They're doing stuff for me. But what ends up happening is they just expect it. And whereas the other parent isn't doing all these things, and on top of not being treated the way you're being treated, they seem like they get a pass on it. Trust me, I've been dealing with this same type of thing for an extended period of time. And it basically drives me crazy, as it is driving you crazy. So let me see. Now I got to remember if I can remember where I was. Let's see here. I'm trying to move down. So actually the dilemma is more about the fact of my caring. That it is what he's doing. In my opinion, these games don't work if the other person doesn't give a damn and goes on with their life. So if the parent goes ahead and goes on dates with friends, goes ahead and goes on vacations while the kid's gone, and goes ahead and do whatever you want to do, then when the kid calls, you may not necessarily want to be available to them. You may want to stop playing your position, if you will, because in my mind, he needs to learn the consequences of his behavior. I agree with that. If I don't want him to have a mindset like his dad's. Consequence is the bottom line. Hey, let me just, I wonder if I can highlight this. Will it let me highlight it so I can find where I'm at? Oh, that didn't work. So obviously I can't do that. So pretend I didn't do all that. So here's the thing. If you're doing something for somebody, or you're giving a gift or whatever, then once you do it, it's out there, right? If the person there's no guarantee. No, that's not the right word. There's no, they don't have to accept it or react to it the way that you would hope that they would. But that doesn't mean that you have to keep doing the same thing. But the other point I wanted to make on this is, this is kind of an example of, one, a double bind that I talk about a lot, and two, the fact that no matter what, the fact that you'll be falling into, depending on what you decide to do, falling into the trap of the narrative that the ex is trying to play against you. Now, let me just, for the record, you can't always make decisions based on that. However, you need to understand the dynamic of what's going on and how this is going to play out. right? I mean, the crazy part about this, and I deal with the same thing. I mean, what this person is talking about, I see this all the time, where I go and I do things for the kids, not because I want to do it, but because they want to do it. Most of the time it's because I don't want to do it. And I'm like, oh crap. But it's important to them. It's valuable to them. So I go ahead and do it. And I've seen a bazillion times where the other parent in my situation, they will do whatever they want to do. And if the kids want to do that too, great. The problem is the kid feels like, oh, the other parent is doing it because of me. And I got a comment way back when from somebody who said that they went to an amusement park like Magic Mountain or Disneyland or whatever it was with their parent, and they initially felt like, oh wow, the parent wants to go with me and it's they want to spend time with me, and it took them a moment to realize, oh wait a minute, this has nothing to do with me. The other person just wants to go, and it's just convenient that I also want to go. See, that's one of those things you have to keep in mind on this. Again, it's incredibly frustrating when you have somebody who's almost an adult at 17 that isn't seeing this. And I've seen the same, I've seen the same thing with actually all of my kids. So let me see if I can figure out where I was, since I tried to tag it and that didn't work. Because, all right, learn the consequences. If I don't want him to behave like his dad. The hard part is I'll just say on this is that no matter what you do, I mean, you can do the best you can do, but at the end of the day, our children are their own sovereign beings, and they're going to choose their direction in life. And if they choose to go down the dark side, all we can do is to try to do everything in our power to give them, at least present the opportunity to not go down that path, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about choice. It's funny, I just was watching The Stand the other day, literally like a couple days ago, and one of the scenes in that, they were talking about when Mother Abigail is talking to Nadine, the bad person. That's one of the things. It's like you always have a choice until you don't have a choice. And that's kind of the situation we're in, and that's kind of the situation Miss Jasmine's in, is her son is making these bad choices, but at the end of the day, it's going to be his choice, And I'll tell you, just because they're flipping out, 17 still pretty young, still pretty immature. The other thing to keep in mind, I've talked about this before, is whenever kids are in this type of situation, typically their emotional development is stunted, and they are emotionally at a younger age than we would expect. Sometimes you think when going through something like this, it would make you more mature. The reality is the opposite happens. You end up getting emotionally delayed. I guess that's my short version of saying, or maybe long version of saying that stick with this. I mean, you're almost done. You only have a year left. So it's like, do you really want to make a decision that that could be the right decision, but you got to weigh the whole thing. So let me get back to where I was on here. He wasn't mistreated throughout his childhood. He hasn't been treated the way his dad was treated as a child. So I really feel that getting a taste of his own medicine, and when he calls mom, maybe mom won't be available. See, the problem with that's going to be is he may not get it, or he may basically think that, you're giving up on me just like daddy said. Anyways, so it's a thing you have to keep in mind. And I'll tell you that I've talked to other people, actually even John Steinbeck, who I do collaborations with often. He had similar issues with his own son. Things have ultimately turned around, but things were getting tense for a while. Let's see. So when he needs mom to sign for financial aid, maybe he should ask his dad. God, it's so funny you say that, because that is exactly one of the things I had. It's like I felt like I was being treated like the dad ATM. And I at least wanted my one daughter who's in university right now to like, ask, because at the time, I didn't have the money. My credit rating wasn't great. And I needed to get a loan to do something, to kind of do this shell game. And if I took out the student loans, it probably would have made where that wouldn't have worked, which would have basically bankrupted me. So, well, whatever, that's a different story. So I can kind of understand this. Maybe you're not, Miss Jasmine, maybe you're not in a situation to where financially it, maybe had this situation not occurred, you would have absolutely signed the financial aid, not a problem, not worried about it. But I think, in that situation, making him ask somebody else first is not a bad idea. Maybe he needs to have consequences to his behavior. Quote, nobody can tell you what the matrix is. You have to see it yourself. What a cool analogy. I like that. That's where I am. I just feel like to allow a 17-year-old kid to control an adult professional woman, that's insane. And I believe that consequences is what's needed. And I agree with you, but just be careful how you do it, right? And I can also say that I'm kind of going through a similar situation, and there are things that I was completely planning on doing, but because things have started to degrade, I'm kind of caught in a maybe this might make sense to you. The dilemma I have is let me back up. I never wanted to say to any of my kids, hey, stop treating me like crap, and I'm willing to do this, this, and this for you. And the reason I never said that is I never wanted them to say, oh, crap, if I do this, this, and this, then, daddy is going to take care of this, that, and the other thing. The one time I did was early on, in the beginning stages of this. I'm not even sure if the divorce was final, or maybe it was. But we're talking, what is it? That's like 10 years ago now, maybe 9 years ago. Kids would not contact me for diddly squat. This is like when they were, 7, 11 and 14 or something like that. I might have the ages messed up, but, around that time frame. And my middle child would completely ignore me, completely, here, let me go back here, would completely not answer any of my texts, basically just like I didn't exist. And one day I get this thing, hey, Daddy, I don't even remember if it was like, hey, how are you doing? It's like, hey, could I have $10 to do whatever? And I did tell her, I'm like, you are not going to ignore me. And this is before I was doing the channel and stuff. So this is in the early days when I really wasn't understanding all the dynamics of what was going on. But what I said is, I'm like, look, I am not going to be just, the ATM or the checkbook for you. So no, I am not going to give you money for something whenever you basically ignore me. And the only time you ever reach out to me is whenever you ask your mom for something, she says no, and then probably said, ask your dad. I don't know. I don't know if I said that to her. And then you come out to me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do, no, that is not the way this is going to play. And it's kind of the same situation Miss Jasmine's talking about with your 17-year-old. So what I would say is, back off a little bit, roll back a little bit, maybe don't be so accommodating. And this is kind of what I've had to do with my youngest lately, is there's certain things that I was absolutely prepared to do this last year, was looking forward to doing, to be perfectly honest. And I've just come, because of some of the wedge issues that have come up between her and I, and primarily orchestrated kind of by her mom, at least not helped. And I've slowed down considerably on some of the things that I'm putting money towards and I'm putting effort toward, because it's just going above and beyond, like Miss Jasmine's here. Let me pull this back up. Like Miss Jasmine's talking about, let me see if I can, like all this stuff right here. Whenever you are completely trying to do the right thing and you're basically getting taken advantage of, you're basically being treated like a checkbook. It's like you're not getting any respect. You're not getting any of the positiveness. And then it's completely annoying. And I think what you were saying, if I read it correctly, the other parent is going off and dating and vacations and living their life and not even doing anything with the kid. And the kid's not even like seeing it. And I see this, I've seen the same thing. Same thing. You know, it's amazing how the other person will be just, I mean, the stuff that they do. You got to remember that a narcissistic person, Miss Jasmine, like in your situation, if your ex is highly narcissistic and potentially undiagnosed cluster B of the personality disorders, they only care about themselves. They give a rat's diddly squat, trying to keep this PG for YouTube, about how their actions and their decisions affect anyone else. If they happen to align, great. That's fine. It's like gift with purchase. And unfortunately, the kids, our child in your situation, are so starved for any type of attention from a parent that is just not emotionally available. They gobble up those breadcrumbs like they're filet mignon. That's cooked really well. You know, I mean, it's crazy. But unfortunately, it's the reality of it. So the only thing I would say is be careful how you, if you decide to do consequences, just be careful how you do it. You don't want to say when little Timmy calls you and says, hey, why weren't you available whenever I needed you? You know, and, you don't want to say, well, you're a little butthead and you seem to want to hang out with your dad and give your dad passes on everything all the time. So, talk to him, don't do it that way. Just be like, well, you're getting older and you're starting to make your own decisions and I didn't get your, whatever, if you didn't get the message or, you weren't available or whatever the thing is, but kind of keep it mellow and see what happens there. You got to be careful because if you put a hard breakdown, and the thing is 17, you're more than likely you're almost done. If you're in one of those states where child support lasts until 21 or college or whatever, then maybe you're not quite at the end of it. But, there's a way that you could do what you're talking about doing. Just be very careful of it. The other thing I'll tell you is be very careful. I'm like looking at the top part of your thing. Be very careful whenever you're completely emotionally and physically exhausted. And with what you had to deal with over the last couple of years with what your professional career and the pandemic. And I'm sure even without the pandemic, which I probably shouldn't even have said, because now YouTube's probably going to blank this, but just be careful that whenever you're exhausted and stressed, your level or your threshold for BS diminishes incredibly. And to be honest, I've had that situation in the last year with my oldest actually, where I was so frustrated and so stressed about everything going on, and his shenanigans pushed my buttons to the point that I exploded. And it wasn't a fun experience. And it was just one of those things where I was so pushed to my breaking point because of the wedge issue I'd mentioned earlier, that my tolerance for taking a breath was gone. And I was very angry at that particular time. So for everyone else going through this, just the thing is, again, on that last part, do not do anything whenever you're completely, pushed to the max. Don't do it. You give yourself time, if you can, to pause and think. I'm even right now in the situation where there's like some decisions I could make, but I only have a couple of years left under this whole paradigm. Now, there are times where I want to just say, you know what, F this, go live with your mom. I'm done with this. I'm sick of it. But I'm not willing to press that. And it's like, I'm at the last part of it. Miss Jasmine, 17 years old, you're at the last part of it. There's not much time left. So it's frustrating. And I'm just looking at your other comment where you're talking about, nobody can tell you what the matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. That's really the sad reality on this, especially for our children, is we cannot tell them what the matrix is. If they're not ready to see it, then they're not going to see it. If they're not ready to accept it, they're not going to accept it. They have to come to it on their own. And it is really, really tough when it's a parent that you're trying to, figure out your relationship with them as a kid, even as an adult adult child to a toxic person. It's really tough. So, Miss Jasmine, take it slow. Keep everything in perspective. I would say before you make any decision, wait until you've got some rest and you feel a little bit more calmer and you can actually really think through. And if you decide in that calm state of mind that your way forward is your way forward and that's what you want to do, and there's not a lot of anger on it, and you're able just to kind of do it rationally and calmly, then that more than likely is going to be your best bet. So on that, hopefully that was helpful. If anyone has any comments for Miss Jasmine, please share them in the comment section below, and I will catch you on the next one.